you very much, Sister Doris, Dear Lily, and Brother Singhuat for today's nice puja. Back with us this week is none other than Brother Ghatikara Loo. Jhana really unnecessary?
Yeah, thank you, Brother Terence, for the kind introduction. Okay, a very good morning to you, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. I'm very happy to be sharing the Dhamma with you again this morning. Okay, so before we begin with today's Dhamma discussion and sharing, let us put our palms together, and pay our deepest and highest respect to the Buddha, the Blessed One, whom through his compassion, effort and sacrifice, that he has rediscovered the path to liberation, and that has enabled us to practice the true Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, a very good morning again, brothers and sisters in Dhamma. Okay, so for today's Dhamma sharing, okay, before I begin, perhaps I will start the sharing my screen. Okay, so the title of today's Dhamma discussion, as we know, I'm going to be sharing with you this discussion, about Jhana, which is a very interesting topic, and a very a topic that is actually very pertinent to meditators, especially during this time, when we have actually many schools of Buddhist traditions, as well as different schools of Buddhism that actually prescribe different meditation methods. So this is a topic which I actually find actually that's very interesting. And the topic actually reads is Jhana really unnecessary for liberation? So perhaps before I begin with today's Dhamma sharing, let me perhaps just pose a question to everyone here. What do you understand by Jhana? So whenever this question is asked, I'm sure this will actually elicit a lot of different responses, as well as different views, as to what Jhana is and what it entails, as taught by the Blessed One. And this is actually not uncommon, especially if you actually attend or you actually listen to many of the Buddhist forums, and international Buddhist forums, attended by monastics and lay people alike. This topic of Jhana, has been actually widely discussed and debated, because there are actually differing and conflicting views as to what Jhana is, and it has become something that's very mystical, and because of different interpretations and different meanings that we ascribe to Jhana, so it has become something that unfortunately, Buddhists nowadays, we do not quite understand what Jhana is, and most of the time we actually understand the notion or the notion or the importance of Jhana based on what we actually hear from Dhamma talks, or what we actually learn from our teachers, and we just actually take it, that is the correct interpretation of Jhana. So actually, of course, I must say that this topic of Jhana is not, an easy topic, for everyone to actually grasp and understand, because it is a very involved and deep topic, especially in the Buddhist meditation, but I will try, to actually present, what the Blessed One actually taught, in respect of Jhana, based on what is actually recorded in the suttas. So actually, when you ask the question, what is jhana? That's actually something. It's a very wide question, and invariably, you actually find the responses, actually falling into two wide spectrums. I mean, when you ask the question, what is jhana? So on the at one end of the spectrum, we actually have this school, that subscribes that this jhana, of course, they say is actually necessary, but their notion of jhana is that this jhana, is you only enter into jhana, when you actually have this when you were able to see these characteristics of jhana. For example, they will actually say that to actually experience jhana, you must actually see a light, when you meditate, and this light is what they call a nimitta, and what you should do is that you should actually focus on this light, and then make it stable, and try to actually make this light, bigger and bigger and larger, so that you actually become, you enter into this light, and you become one with the light, and so in that situation, when you enter into light and you stabilize the light, right, then they actually say that when you're in this jhanic state, okay, this is what they teach, then you are not percipient, in respect of your sense doors. Means you're not able to hear anything, smell anything, or see anything or taste anything, which means your sense doors are actually closed when you're in jhana, which means you're not percipient, okay, and because this is actually a state, where you actually enter into this light, okay, and you cannot actually contemplate, for example, the non-self nature or the impermanence, anicca, dukkha, anatta. You're not able to contemplate. So you need to actually withdraw and emerge, from this jhana state before you can actually contemplate, and undertake vipassana. That is what is being taught, by this school, and of course, they also teach that you must actually attain to a very high level of jhana before you can actually embark on vipassana. It means for you to practice samatha, you must actually reach at a very high level of jhana before you can switch to vipassana and practice. So they actually teach that you must actually attain at least the four jhanas, before one is advised to switch to vipassana, and contemplate anicca, dukkha, anatta. So this is actually one spectrum of jhana, and this this teaching of this jhana of entering light, nimitta, and all this, is for those who subscribe to the cultivation of jhana, as recorded in Visuddhimagga, which is actually the path of purification. But of course, this part, Visuddhimagga, is written, after the Buddha's Mahaparinibbana, so that is actually one school, that they actually subscribe to this Visuddhimagga as the authoritative text, and they seem to hold the view that this Visuddhimagga prevails over the suttas, So that is actually how they teach in terms of jhana, okay, and because of this way that they have taught jhana, right, that you must see the light, nimitta, and all this, I was told that it is actually not an easy task, it's an uphill task for anyone to be able to attain to this state of jhana, where you actually see light, you enter into the light, you make the light stable and large, and you actually become one with the light, and I was told that it's actually very difficult to attain this sort of meditative absorption. What happens is you need to focus on a single point. For example, maybe you focus at the tip of your nose, or something. You focus on one single point to the point you see light. So I was told that actually to attain this sort of jhanic state, so-called the jhanic state, based on Visuddhimagga, is something that's not easy. It's actually a very uphill task. I was told that out of like a few thousand, of yogis who try, perhaps only maybe a handful, who are able to get this sort of meditative state. So it's something that's actually not easy to achieve, to attain, to get this sort of a deep meditative, meditative state. So, arising because of this, there's another school, on the other spectrum, where I actually teach that jhana is actually not necessary, because this is so difficult to actually attain jhana. By the time you try to cultivate, jhana, you have lost the opportunity, to actually see and know and see, the true Dhamma, So what they teach is, there's actually no need, to practice jhana at all. Um, you know, um, uh, and because firstly, it's very difficult, to attain. And secondly, they say that jhana, will only lead you to develop psychic powers, like for example, you're able to read people's mind, embracing your mind, onto others' mind. You're able to go through the wall, and you're able to walk on water, and you're able to, dart into, hard ground as if it's water. You're able to uh, 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 you're able to hear, heavenly sound, all the divine eye and divine ear. You're able to see, the destinations of those who have passed away, and you're able to actually hold the moon in your hand, and fly like a bird into the sky. All these are the psychic powers, that you develop through jhana. So the other school of Buddhism actually thinks that, all these psychic powers are not necessary. I mean, they are actually, why should you actually have all these psychic powers? So they actually teach that, you should just go straight into vipassana, and they actually teach that you can just see the truth by actually using momentary concentration, which is what they call the Kanika Samadhi, and maybe Upachara Samadhi, the excess concentration and momentary concentration, So without actually, attaining jhanas, so they actually teach, jhana is not necessary, to become arahant. So that's why we have this term called the dry vision arahant. Have you heard that? Dry vision arahant is like the sukha vipassaka arahant. Means the eye is dry because jhana is like a moisture. It actually lubricates, your meditative practice. Because it facilitates, your seeing, and the knowing and seeing the Dhamma. But this school actually teaches that jhana is not necessary, because you can just go straight into contemplating, the sankharas, by just going straight into seeing, anicca, dukkha, anatta without going through jhanas. So there's no need to actually, practice all these high jhanic level and all this, and you just have to use momentary kanika samadhi and upachara samadhi and just see, arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. So you actually have these two spectrums. One actually says you need to have jhana and a practice, to high level before you can practice vipassana, and then the other actually school of thought actually says no need. You just go straight into contemplating, anicca, dukkha, anatta by looking at all the sankharas. Just go straight into it, So we have this actually diverse schools of Buddhism that actually teach the two different ways of what jhana is. So even as Buddhists, lay Buddhists, we are also a bit perplexed, right? Like what exactly should we do? Do we actually, which school should we subscribe to? Like going to a supermarket, you don't know which item to buy, right? So many things, each has a different price range, different features, So should I do jhana or should I not do jhana? And you're very frightened, because you actually think about, must enter into the light focus. Some people focus until they get headaches, So is this really what the Buddha taught in terms of jhana? So that's why I find it, that it's our responsibility to actually learn what the Buddha actually taught, our blessed one taught, as recorded in the suttas, in the discourses, because we know that what the Buddha actually taught in terms of the Dhamma, right, is actually beautiful in the beginning, middle, and end. And it is actually it will be such a loss to us, that if we do not actually find out for ourselves what actually the Buddha taught in respect of jhana, and because of that, we actually lose the opportunity, of attaining different stages of enlightenment, because we are actually walking at a different path from what the Buddha actually taught. So it's very, very important that we always go back to the suttas and find out what did the Buddha actually teach, in jhana, like what the Buddha actually says in terms of the four great references, right? Even though I've heard this being said by a well-known master, a very highly regarded, a monk, or mention teacher, or yeah, I heard it, from such and such a group of monks. You must still actually refer, back to the discourses, as the teachings of the Buddha, exactly, whether it is in line, what the Buddha actually taught. If it's in line, if it's not in line, then we can just disregard it. But if it's in line, then we'll accept it and practice it. So that's why I hope, from this Dhamma discussion, we'll be able to find out exactly what the Buddha actually taught. And the first sutta I want to share with you is actually this AN 4.77, where the Buddha actually talk about, this Achintita Sutta, about the four unconjecturable, Dhamma or matters, that we should not actually contemplate and try to, try to try to actually make it logical to us, and try to understand the full depth of this. And of course, the Buddha says one of the first one is actually the range of the Buddha's abilities and powers is actually unconjecturable. And if you see the second one, the Buddha says the jhana, range of a person in jhana, is actually unconjecturable. You cannot actually fathom the jhana range of a person in jhana. And of course, the third one is results of karma, and of course, the beginning and the ending of the world is also something not to be conjectured about. So if you look at this, actually what the Buddha says here is that this jhana is actually a very exalted state. It's something that even the Buddha describes jhana, as the footprint of the Tathagata. The Buddha actually places jhana, in a very, very high position. Of course, the Buddha does not actually say that, this jhana is the be all and end all. It is actually a means to an end, because, we develop jhana because we need to have that sort of composure of mind, for us to be able to see, the intrinsic nature of phenomena, like anicca, dukkha, anatta. If your mind is scattered, and not properly, not properly tuned or structured to actually understand, to see and know and see the Dhamma, then you will not be able to actually understand, what to penetrate into the Dhamma. That's why this jhana is a very exalted state, and the Buddha has actually exalted, and encouraged us to actually develop this jhana, even as lay people, to develop jhana as far as we can. So firstly, I also want to share this sutta with you, which I actually briefly talk about, about this dry vision arahant, where it is actually said that jhana is not required. Jhana is not required because you can just go straight and contemplate, and just do vipassana. But if you actually look, and this notion that jhana is not necessary, perhaps it could have been derived from this sutta, from Samyutta Nikaya 12.70, which is actually the Susima Sutta. This sutta is actually about this wanderer Susima, right? He was actually at the time living in Rajagaha, at the time, because at the time the Buddha was also staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo grove. At the time in India, and during that time, this Buddha Sasana was actually flourishing, and the Buddha was actually worshipped, revered, honored, and was actually well supported in terms of robes, alms, food, and requisites, and the monks were also, well supported, but the wanderers of other sects were not actually revered, they were not venerated because they were not able to, teach the Dhamma in the way the Buddha, did. And the Buddha actually taught the Dhamma in such a wonderful way that everybody could relate to it, and everybody, was so amazed by how wonderful the Dhamma is. So everybody, so the Buddha actually had, a large, following, and everybody supported the Buddha, and the monastics and Sangha, So this Susima was actually a wanderer like this. He's actually an ascetic, a wanderer, and he of course also had his following, and this his followers actually told him, his followers told Susima, why don't you go and become a monk, enter the order, and then learn the Dhamma, and then teach the Dhamma to us, and others, so that we are also well supported as well. So they actually want to be well supported, like the Buddha and the Sangha. So this Susima's wanderers, his followers, actually asked him to enter the order, the monks' order, and try to learn the Dhamma and teach, so that they also be well supported. Then of course this Susila agreed. This Venerable Susila then went to see Venerable Ananda, and told him, oh, I wanted to actually go forth, and the Buddha agreed, and he became a monk. So when he became a monk, right, so at the time, he actually noticed a large number of monks actually declared they became arahants in the presence of the Buddha. So this Venerable Susima, was actually very curious. So he actually went to find out from these arahants. So he asked, is it true that you declared that you become arahants? Then this monk said yes, and then this Venerable Susima actually asked them, so do you actually have this super powers, super psychic powers, where you can walk on water, where you can fly through sky, and read people's mind, and see all these psychic powers, do you have or not? You see what they respond, the monks, the Arahant monk said, no, we don't have these psychic powers. And of course, this Venerable Susima then further went on and asked, about all the other psychic powers like divine ear, divine eye. Can you read people's mind? Can you recollect, your past lives? Can you see beings pass away, and being reborn in other realms, with your divine eye, and then the last one, he actually asked the monks, do you actually dwell touching with your body the peaceful emancipation, the formless state beyond form? This is the key point. You see, he actually asked the monks whether these monks actually are able to personally experience this peaceful abiding, which is actually the formless state, the formless attainments. Jhanas are actually a form, right? It's actually attainments in form, but this peaceful abiding is actually, for those who actually are able to attain the formless attainments, the arupas. So he actually asked the monks whether you're able to personally experience these peaceful attainments in these formless attainments. Then these monks would say, no, friend, and this Venerable Susima became a bit, in a way, like disappointed, right? And he said, didn't you make the declaration without having attained any of these dhammas? He was like, how come you're arahants, but how come you don't have all these psychic powers and all this, and you don't even are able to experience the arupa attainments? How can you call yourself arahants? Then this group of monks said, well, we are released through wisdom, friend Susima. So actually it's because of this, that's why there is this notion that arahants who are released by wisdom do not need to have jhanas. But if you read the sutta, actually what this group of monks actually declared is that they haven't actually experienced the formless attainments. They did not say that they did not attain the 4 jhanas. So that is the part that we need to actually make it very clear, distinguish it. It's not to say that they did not attain the 4 jhanas. They merely said they did not attain the arupas. So it's for you to say that we can attain arahantship without the jhanas. Is also not in line with this Susima Sutta, right? So that is the first sutta I want to highlight to you. In terms of the importance of these jhanas. You see, this from AN 9.44, if you want to read, you can read this. It's actually from book of numerical discourses. It's something about what the Buddha called release through wisdom. Because for any attainment of arahantship, there are 2 ways normally declared. One, the arahant say, oh, I'm actually I'm liberated by wisdom. And then the other type of arahant say, oh, I'm liberated both ways. Liberated by wisdom means it's panya vimutta. But if you're liberated both ways, means it's the ubato bhaga vimutta. So if you actually liberated by wisdom, you see from here, the Buddha says, liberated by wisdom. To what extent is one liberated by wisdom, as described by the Blessed One? Here it says, this is a case, my friend, where a monk withdrawn from this sensuality or unskillful qualities enters into the first jhana, where you experience, the vitaka, vichara, piti sukha, So, and this piti sukha is actually pleasure from withdrawal, from seclusion, and you see, and he knows it through discernment, So for one to be liberated by wisdom, one actually needs to attain, at least the first jhana, okay. So also this sutta also is also very interesting. It also dispels the notion that arahant must attain the 4 jhanas. That means you must attain first, second, third, fourth jhana in order for you to become an arahant. Actually, if you read the sutta here, if you're liberated by wisdom, the Buddha says if you actually attain the first jhana and you actually use your wisdom to contemplate, and here you can actually attain liberation, release, liberation, by just actually attaining first jhana alone. You don't even have to attain 4 jhanas, as and as what is actually popularly believed, that in order for you to attain 4 jhanas, you must attain arahantship, you must have 4 jhanas. But if you read this sutta, liberation by wisdom, actually only the first jhana is enough. Okay, and of course the Buddha then talks about the other second, third, fourth jhana, and also the other arupas, So here the thing here is liberation by wisdom. The main most prominent factor here, that is actually being used to attain liberation is through wisdom. And here we see that at least the first jhana must be attained. So you cannot actually attain arahantship based on this sutta itself, without even attaining first jhana, because the Buddha describes, if you're liberated by wisdom, you must actually attain at least the first jhana. And of course, in AN 9.45, it talks about liberation in both ways, the upato bhaga vimutta. Okay, and if what is it actually is liberated by both ways? Okay, the Buddha says if you are liberated by both ways means of course, you must also attain at least the first jhana, but here the difference is he remains touching with his body in whatever there is an opening there. He knows it through discernment. Means he's able to personally experience, the peaceful abiding, in the formless attainment, as compared to the liberated by wisdom. He only attains the different stages, but he's not able to personally experience, the peaceful abiding, in the formless attainments. Here, the translation used here is touching with his body, which is in Pali is kayena, but kaya, in the Pali, in the Pali suttas can have different meanings. It can mean body, but in many instances, it also means personally or experientially. So I think Bhante Agachita covered this in quite widely and in depth, in one of the workshops on this, the interpretation of kaya. And so here we actually have this released by both, and you see here, to be released by both ways, you must actually have at least the first jhana. You cannot just be liberated by both ways if you do not have the first jhana. So again, as I mentioned, jhana, is a very exalted state, and it actually it plays a very critical, essential role, in our spiritual journey, in our spiritual practice towards liberation. And we can see that because this jhana, actually has a very pivotal position in the Noble Eightfold Path, as we can see from this Samyutta Nikaya 45.8. At the time, the Buddha was actually staying in Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, and then he was actually teaching the monks about the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Buddha actually asked the monks, what monks is the Noble Eightfold Path? Of course, the Buddha actually lists out, the 8 path factors under the Noble Eightfold Path, right? Which we're all very familiar with. But I just want to highlight to you, in respect of this part about the right samadhi, because this is the focus of our Dhamma discussion today, right? So the Buddha actually asked the monks, what is right samadhi? Right. Of course, the interpretation is concentration, but actually, samadhi is not about concentration. As you can see afterwards, it's not about concentrating on something, to see the nimitta. It is not, But if you actually read the sutta here, the Buddha says, what is right samadhi? This is the case where a monk, quite withdrawn, from sensuality and, and withdrawn from all the unwholesome states, enters and, it remains in the first jhana, where you actually have this directed thought and evaluation, vitakka, vichara, and also piti sukha. Piti sukha actually is actually born from seclusion, because you're withdrawal, seclusion. So this is actually the first jhana. Then of course, the Buddha actually then talks about proceeds to describe the second jhana. The second jhana is actually when this vitakka vichara, are actually they are still. So there is actually absence of this vitakka vichara, and he enters into this piti sukha only, in the second jhana, and of course the Buddha then proceeds to describe the third and fourth jhana accordingly, which are described here, as the jhanic state that becomes, more refined and more refined, then you actually have piti, being still, then you have more and more exalted states, where you're equanimous, you're mindful, and to the fourth jhana, where you have this neither pleasure nor pain state, and it's pure equanimity and mindfulness. So the Buddha actually describes this right samadhi as any of the four jhanas, Okay, of course, in this sutta, the Buddha just describes the four jhanas, but if you actually go through the other suttas, you will find that to attain liberation, the Buddha, makes it very clear, that any of the jhanas alone is sufficient for us to attain arahantship, either first, second, or third, or fourth jhana, So as you can see here, jhana itself actually occupies a very pivotal role in the Noble Eightfold Path. It is actually the four jhanas actually comprise right samadhi. So if you actually don't practice jhana, then essentially you're only practicing 7 path factors and not 8 path factors. So jhana is actually something that's very, very important. It's very critical. Okay. And if you can see from this AN 3.73, which is also a very enlightening sutta, if you look at this, this is about Sakka Sutta, and at the time, this Buddha was actually staying among the Sakyans in Kapilavatthu, in Banyan Park, and at that time, the Buddha, had just recovered from being ill. The Buddha was not well. He became ill, and he just recovered from his illness. And this Mahanama, the Sakyan, actually went to see the Blessed One, and he wanted to ask the Buddha some questions about Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, between one in training, and the one who has completed training, which means between a Sekha and an Aseka, Aseka means Arahant. A Sekha means from a stream enterer, Sotapanna, up all the way up to Anagami, that is, those are actually those in training. Whereas an Arahant who has attained Arahantship, then an Arahant, would actually be one who has completed training, Aseka, So here, this Mahanama actually wanted to ask the Buddha the difference in Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, between a trainee, and a non-trainee, And Venerable Ananda actually answered this question, because the Buddha was not well, so Venerable Ananda, answered this on behalf of the Buddha, So you see here, what did Venerable Ananda say? And what is the concentration of one who is in training? What is the samadhi of one who is training? Means if you are still in training, how should you actually develop this samadhi? And you see again, the 4 jhanas are described here. Means even if you're just a Sotapanna, you must actually practice this the 4 jhanas until you become an Arahant. The Venerable Ananda never actually said that you can actually one in training can actually do without jhana, and still become an Arahant. But here the Venerable Ananda says for one who's in training, still in Sotapanna until Anagami, and who is actually striving to be an Arahant, you must actually practice the 4 jhanas. Again, this underscores the importance of 4 jhanas. and you must actually practice 4 jhanas, as either of the 4 jhanas, even if you're able to enter the first jhana and able to contemplate, anicca, dukkha, anatta, deep enough, able to actually break through to the Dhamma, then the first jhana alone is enough. But you must, practice either of the 4 jhanas in order for you to attain liberation if you are still a trainee. So that itself underscores the importance of cultivating jhana. Again, if you actually read this Samyutta Nikaya 55.5, which is actually taken from the Samyutta Nikaya on stream entry, Sottapatti Samyutta, it's actually from SN 55, and this is actually taken from 55.5. There is a conversation between the Blessed One, and Venerable Sariputta, So this Buddha asked Venerable Sariputta, what is the stream, Then this Venerable Sariputta answers, the stream actually is the Noble Eightfold Path, and the Buddha praised Sariputta, yes, correct, you are right, this stream refers to the Noble Eightfold Path, Then the Buddha asked the second question, say, Sariputta, they speak of a stream enterer, what is a stream enterer, And his Venerable Sariputta responded by saying, Sir, Bhante, anyone who possesses the Noble Eightfold Path is called a stream enterer, and the venerable of such and such a name and clan, So the Buddha actually agreed, and praised Venerable Sariputta. He says, good Sariputta, For anyone who possesses this Noble Eightfold Path is called a stream enterer, the venerable of such and such name and clan. So which means, which in order for you to even become a Sotapanna, you need to actually cultivate, this jhanas, because jhana actually comprises what the 8 path factor, right? Which is samma samadhi, which comprises any of the 4 jhanas, right? So if to even become a Sotapanna, from this sutta itself, it's clear you must possess the 8 path factors in the Noble Eightfold Path, of which Samma Samadhi comprises one of the path factors, right, which is the 8 path factor of Samma Samadhi, comprising the 4 jhanas. So again, we can see here, to become a Sotapanna, you need also to have, to practice any of the 4 jhanas. And the other sutta I want to share with you also, this Majjhima Nikaya 27, is a very, very lovely sutta, that actually describes this conversation between this Brahmin Janu Soni and the Blessed One. And it's a very long sutta, if you want to read, you can read it, It actually talks about, firstly, this Brahmin Janu Soni, actually he met this this wanderer called Pilotika, This Pilotika, actually praised the Buddha, in terms of the Buddha's wisdom, in terms of the Buddha's lucidity of wisdom. I say, who am I to actually know, this Buddha's lucidity of wisdom? If I'm only equal, with the Buddha, then only I'm able to assess, right, and know the Buddha's lucidity of wisdom. But now he says, the Buddha's lucidity of wisdom is, is actually excellent, and I cannot fathom his lucidity of wisdom, So due to this, all these conversations, this Janu Soni, actually, he was actually drawing this white horses, white mares, with the white chariot, and he actually then went to see the Buddha, and then, and this Pilotika actually, before that, this Pilotika actually, describe about this, footprint of the Buddha. He actually makes a comparison, with the elephant's footprint, and he says that he's convinced the Buddha is actually fully enlightened because, he actually draws this 4 signs, just like you see 4 signs of an elephant footprint, then you know it's a bull elephant. Then he says, there are these 4 signs because whoever, like learned nobles, learned Brahmins, learned households, and learned recluses, they actually wanted to go and rebut the Buddha, they wanted to argue the Buddha, but in the end, they all became so inspired by the Buddha's teaching, they became followers of the Buddha, So he said by these 4 signs, he actually convinced that the Buddha is fully enlightened, but then this Buddha told this Janu Soni, actually this analysis of the elephant's footprint is not complete, So Actually, it's a very long sutta, but in essence, what the Buddha is actually trying to say here, I just want to draw your attention to this. You see how 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 um, careful, and also how deep the Buddha's wisdom is, that the Buddha will not accept something unless the evidence is so compelling, he says that even if you see, for example, a big footprint, doesn't mean it's a male elephant, right? Sometimes a she elephant can also have a big footprint, footprint. And you see, even though you see, like, scrapings on the tree, it doesn't mean that it's a bull elephant. Sometimes, even she elephants can have tusks also, if they're big enough, and even if you see scrapings at very tall part of the tree, doesn't mean there's a bull, a big and bull, a tall bull elephant. Sometimes the she elephant can be also be very tall, and they can actually make the scraping as well, So you see just how detailed and how careful the Buddha is, and he says that you should not just accept that the Buddha is fully enlightened, just by looking at this, all these signs, see, so here actually what the Buddha is trying to say here is, you see here, okay, having abandoned these 5 hindrances, so you see, even if you have attained the first jhana, you still cannot actually, come to the conclusion that the Blessed One is fully enlightened. Even the Buddha has first jhana, a second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, doesn't mean the Buddha is fully enlightened. It's the same analysis as when you see a big footprint, elephant footprint, doesn't mean it's a bull elephant, right? It can be a female elephant, So the Buddha actually is so detailed, that that you cannot just simply believe the Buddha is fully enlightened just by the 4 jhanas. Of course, it's a very, very inspiring this Dhamma given by the Buddha to this Janusoni. And then he says that only when you experience and you know for yourself that you've attained, then only you will know that Buddha is fully enlightened. So that is the ending of the sutta, okay. But what I'm trying to actually highlight to you here is, you see here, the first jhana, the Buddha described this Brahmin is called a footprint of the Tathagata, something scraped by the Tathagata, something marked by the Tathagata. So you see the first jhana itself, the Buddha says is the footprint of the Buddha. So the Buddha actually has high praises for jhana, and if he actually encourages us to develop this very exalted state in jhana. So we shouldn't actually denigrate jhana and say, oh, it's not necessary, if we can just go in and just practice and no need to practice jhana. You see, but the Buddha here in the suttas actually describes how wonderful the Buddha, the jhana is. It's like a footprint of the Tathagata. So we must actually take heed of this. And even from SN 16.9, we see that many of the Buddha's disciples also develop this first, second, third, fourth jhana. Like what the Buddha describes here. He says, Bhikkhu, to what extent I wish, secluded from sensual pleasure and unwholesome state. The Buddha says that he often enters and dwells in first jhana. When he's secluded from all these unwholesome states. And accompanied by vitaka, vichara, and piti sukha. Born of seclusion. And he says, and Venerable Kassapa too, whenever he wishes, he also attains the first jhana. Second, the same goes for second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. The state of all these arupas, in terms of all the the conscious, in terms of the transcending the base of infinity of space, infinity of consciousness, all the way to nothingness, all these, of course, these are the arupas, but what I'm trying to say here is you see, jhanas are developed by the monks and also the Buddha, at that time, during the Buddha's time, it's actually something that is actually very, very exalted state, and not only to monks, if you see from AN 5.176, Piti Sutta, rapture, this sutta actually records this conversation between the Buddha, the Blessed One, and this his chief supporter Anathapindika. So there was one day this Anathapindika actually, together with his 500 lay followers, went to see the Buddha, and they offered dana to the Buddha. Offered Buddha and also the monastics, the sangha of monks with monks' robes, with alms food, with lodging, with medicine. So they did a sankika dana. So so the Buddha, after after this, he actually told this Anathapindika, he just read this section in yellow, which highlighted here. The Buddha says, you shouldn't rest content with the thought we have provided the community of monks with robes, alms, food, lodgings, and medicine, for the sick. But you should train yourself. Let's periodically enter and remain in seclusion and rapture. That's how you should train yourself. You see, the Buddha in this AN 5.176 is actually encouraging and exhorting Anathapindika, who was a lay person, lay follower, to actually practice and cultivate jhanas. Because seclusion and rapture, as what we can see, are factors of the first jhana, right? Because piti sukha, born of seclusion, is actually characteristics of first jhana. So the Buddha is actually asking, encouraging Anathapindika, do not just be satisfied with just doing dana alone. You should do more than just dana. You should actually meditate and dwell and remain in first jhana, and in jhana, basically in jhanic state. That is how you should train yourself. So from here we can see that the Buddha, the practice of jhana is not just confined to monastics, even during Buddha's time, but also also for lay people as well. So which I think is actually very enlightening, because most people, sometimes some people say, oh, jhana is actually for those monks who actually have time to practice only. I'm only a lay person, I don't think I can practice jhana. So but you can see from AN 5.176, the Buddha actually encourages lay people to actually cultivate and develop jhana, in seclusion and in rapture. Okay, so in Anguttara Nikaya 5.264, the Buddha again encourages us to develop jhanas, and he says, in order for you to develop jhanas, you must actually make sure you abandon these 5 stinginess. Means that you are miserly when it comes to monastery, to your supporters. You're miserly, with your gains, with the assets and wealth you have. You are miserly on your status, and your ingratitude means you have no gratitude, for the good that others have done for you, and you respond, in ways, which you become very, you don't remember, the good deeds they have done for you, but you ignore them, disregard them, and respond in a way that show your ingratitude, So because of these 5 things, the Buddha says, if you don't abandon this, you're not capable of entering into first jhana. So and from this Dhammapada 372 again, you see, it's also something that I also want to highlight to you. It says, the Buddha says, there is no jhana for one with no wisdom. Means if you have no wisdom, means you have no jhana. And then if there's no wisdom for one with no jhana, means if you do not have jhana, then there is actually no wisdom. So this is actually something that is actually thought-provoking, right? As the one I highlighted in yellow, there is no wisdom for one with no jhana. This is what the Buddha says in Dhammapada 372. So which means jhana is actually very integral. It's something that's actually very critical, very essential, in the spiritual progress. That if you want to actually develop wisdom to uproot ignorance, we must develop jhana. Again, in Dhammapada 181, you see, even the Devas actually envy those with jhana. It says they that enlighten intent on jhana, delighting in stealing and renunciation, self-awakened and mindful. Even the Devas view them with envy, because the Devas they actually envy those the meditators and yogis, and also the enlightened ones, who actually are able to dwell in jhanas. So again, we can see from all these that jhana is actually something that's actually very, very important. As recorded in the suttas. Okay, and then and of course, just to actually share with you this AN 11.17, which is the Dasama Sutta, right? Okay, here, earlier I actually spoke that, jhanas, because in some schools of Buddhism, they teach that jhanas, when you enter the jhana, then you are not percipient in your sense doors, means you cannot hear anything, you cannot, you can, your sense doors are all closed, basically, and you're not percipient. But if you look at this AN 11.17 is actually about this conversation between Venerable Ananda and this householder called Dasama. Here, Venerable Ananda actually describes that when you're in jhana, right, see here, when he says when you're in jhana, you see here, he reflects this and discerns, this first jhana is fabricated and intended, and whatever is fabricated, intended is inconstant and subject to cessation. So staying right there, he reaches the ending of the mental fermentations. So you see here, actually this sutta, this Dasama is asking Venerable Ananda, is there one single quality declared by the Blessed One that one can actually attain arahantship? What is that single quality that the Buddha declared that will actually enable one to attain arahantship and attain final liberation? So Venerable Ananda said, yes, there is. Then the Buddha, then Venerable Ananda actually talks about the 4 jhanas. And if you actually look at the first jhana, here here he describes this monk. He enters in the first jhana, and then when he's in first jhana, he actually contemplates the jhana factors, means these jhana factors are actually dependently arisen through causes and conditions. And because of that, he actually becomes an arahant just by contemplating the first jhana factors. So from this sutta itself, we can see that even in jhana, you can actually contemplate, the jhana factors, how they arise through causes and conditions, and because of that, you're able to attain arahantship. So again, we find that it's very different from what we actually know. That jhana means you cannot, you don't know anything, you must withdraw from jhana. Only then you can actually contemplate, the anicca, dukkha, anatta. But if you see from this this sutta alone, and actually, even if you're jhana, if you're in jhana, you're still able to contemplate anicca, dukkha, anatta. So, this is something we need to take note that the jhana the sutta jhana is very different from the Visuddhimagga jhana. So we need to be aware, but we need to make sure we practice the right way, in accordance with what the Buddha actually taught in the suttas, in terms of how jhana is to be practiced. The factors of jhana, the first, second, third, fourth jhana, those are the most important, but the Buddha never taught about nimitta and all this. So we need to actually find the truth ourselves, what the Buddha actually taught. And from this sutta, we also can find that, we also can see that, by actually entering first jhana alone, one can become an arahant, because you see here it says, the unended fermentations go to the total ending, just by actually entering into the first jhana, this Dasama Sutta, And again, in this AN 4.124, again, you see that this Buddha actually describes the 4 individuals, means there are 4 individuals that attains into this jhana. And when he describes the first jhana, when even he actually is in jhana, he actually is able to contemplate, whatever phenomena they are connected with form, feelings, perception, fabrications, consciousness, as inconstant, stressful, empty, and not self. Means even if you're in first jhana, you're able to actually contemplate the 5 aggregates, in terms of your form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. Like what I actually, in my previous Dhamma talk, I said that if you want to become a stream enterer, you must actually see the 5 aggregates as non-self, and through your 6 sense basis, through this open mindfulness meditation. So actually, the Buddha says, if you actually are in first jhana, you can actually contemplate the 5 aggregates, to see them as not self, as anatta, as empty, only then you're able to let go, of all the defilements and all the fetters, So you see, like, but even in first jhana, you're able to contemplate. It doesn't mean that you need to emerge from the jhana and only then you can actually do vipassana, right? So again, this is another sutta that actually draws a distinction between the different teachings are taught by different schools, and again in this MN 111, also this interesting sutta where the Buddha actually describes the range of samadhi attained by Venerable Sariputta. Even though Sariputta in many suttas actually describe Venerable Sariputta as not having psychic power, if you actually read this sutta, you find that Venerable Sariputta, his range of samadhi is so huge, it's so wide, and so cannot be fathomed that. And if you read, of course, he starts from first jhana, the first jhana, you see, he actually, even though he's in first jhana, with this vitaka vichara, piti sukha, right, but he's still able to be aware of contact, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. He's aware of the desire, decision, persistence, mindfulness, equanimity, and attention. He ferreted Dhamma, ferreted means understood. He understood Dhamma one after another, and he actually he actually contemplates this in terms of what? In terms of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. He actually you see, known to him, they arose, known to him, they remained, known to him, they subsided, which means during this jhana itself, this Venerable Sariputta is able to see, be aware of the five aggregates together with all, the desires and all the other things that arise in his mind. He's able to understand them, and he's able to contemplate them through seeing anicca, dukkha, anatta, and seeing non-self. So you can see from this sutta that jhana is not about a state where you're totally oblivious, and you don't know anything is what's happening, and you only see light, and that's not the case. If you read the suttas, they are fully aware, fully mindful, and they're able to see, see and understand, see and know and see the Dhamma, and able to penetrate the Dhamma by seeing the non-self nature in the five aggregates and all that arise in his mind. So again, we can see this jhana, in the sutta is very different from the Visuddhimagga jhana, and and most people say jhana, where you're not percipient and you don't know what's happening, you're just focused on the light, and your mind is empty, you're not conscious of all your sense doors. Actually, if you look at AN 5.28, again, we see the way that the Blessed One has actually described jhana is very, very different. He actually describes the first jhana, as that this rapture and pleasure, born from withdrawal, and this person in first jhana actually permeates and pervades, suffuses and fills his body with rapture and pleasure born from seclusion. There's nothing in his entire body unpervaded by piti and sukha born from seclusion, which means this person in first jhana is very, very much conscious, right? He's actually percipient of the feelings, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant feeling, in terms of this rapture, pleasure. He's able to be aware of this rapture, pleasure arising in his mind, So it's not a case where, if you're in first jhana means, totally, you are like totally blocked out, and you don't know what's happening, So that is actually not the notion of jhana, as what the Buddha actually taught as well. So, of course, if you know, the importance of jhana, I just want to share with you about this sutta, from this Samyutta Nikaya 52, 52.22. 52.21, sorry, 52.21 is actually about this Venerable Anuruddha, this sutta is actually very interesting because it actually tells us how we should practice to actually attain, to cultivate this jhana, right? you see here, from this sutta, Venerable Ananda at the time, Venerable Anuruddha at the time was dwelling at Savatthi in Anantapindika's park, Then a number of bhikkhus actually approached this Venerable Anuruddha and exchanged greetings with him, and then they asked this question, they asked Venerable Anuruddha this question: by having developed and cultivated what things has the Venerable Anuruddha attained to greatness and of direct knowledge, So here, you can see from here, of course, this Venerable Anuruddha actually spoke a lot of things, but if you look at this part 21, the Jhana, he says, friends, it's because I've developed and cultivated the 4 establishments of mindfulness that I understand as it really is the defilement, the cleansing and emergence in regard to the jhanas, the deliverance, concentrations, and attainments, which means it's because of cultivating the 4 satipatthanas, the 4 establishment of mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that this Anuruddha is able to attain the jhanas, So in the practice taught by the Blessed One, it's not just looking at one single object, and entering to light. In fact, to attain jhanas here, like what Venerable Anuruddha attained, he actually practiced the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which means contemplation of the body, the feelings, the mind, and also the phenomena, And this is actually when you practice open mindfulness, it's actually when you actually read your mind, you see what arises, whether there's this lobha, dosa, moha in you, and then from there you contemplate, and to see the anicca, dukkha, anatta, This is actually how the jhana is actually even developed. It means you try to be mindful at all times. What you do, your sense doors, what you see, what you hear. The samadhi, the concentration becomes very continuous and very strong. And you're able to see what arises in your mind. Whether there's lobha, dosa, moha, and then you use samatha and vipassana to calm yourself, and from there you actually contemplate anicca, dukkha, anatta. So with this, this Venerable Anuruddha is able to attain a very high states of jhana. So again, this practice of 4 satipatthanas is not just about vipassana, but it's also about samatha as well. To practice jhanas. So we can see from here, so sometimes people say, oh, the 4 foundations of mindfulness satipatthana is actually about vipassana, but actually it's not. If you look at this, Venerable Anuruddha actually attained high levels of jhana by just practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is the 4 satipatthana. So we can see here, this 4 satipatthana, of course, is something that's very interesting. What the Buddha has actually, he has laid down a path for us, in terms of how we should practice. Like what I covered in my previous talks, how you contemplate the 5 aggregates based on through the 6 sense bases, how you should actually contemplate through samatha, vipassana, using both as the vehicles to attain wisdom, by seeing how all these sankharas in your mind, like lobha, dosa, moha, all these arise through causes and conditions. They arise dependently arisen. Just like the sutta I actually spoke about last time, this Venerable Nandaka gave this wonderful Dhamma about the oil lamp, about the light, about the fire, how it's actually dependently arisen through the conditions to support the fire. That's why it's called anatta. It cannot exist independently of conditions. So otherwise, you call it atta only if it's able to exist without conditions. Then you can call it a self, a non-changing self. But because this non-self, the fire, is dependent on so many factors, can you really say the fire is actually has a self atta? Cannot. It is anatta. So that's why if you're actually able to contemplate this, through your 6 sense bases, then slowly, you're able to attain all the jhanas. Then then you find that actually attaining the sutta jhana, is not really that difficult, to attain the first jhana itself, and first jhana itself is able to actually enable you to progress into arahantship, based on the various suttas, so it's not so sometimes we need not be disheartened, that we need to develop very high levels of jhana, until we see the light, the nimitta, and all this, then only we do vipassana. But actually from suttas, it's not necessary so, because you can just develop you can become an arahant just by developing any of the four jhanas and proceeding to contemplate, anicca, dukkha, anatta in the sankharas. Then you might be able to penetrate, into the Dhamma and see the light of Dhamma, and reach different stages of enlightenment, from stream entry all the way to arahantship. So in conclusion, what I'm trying to highlight in this Dhamma talk is that all these different notions and different views on jhana, is mainly because of the different emphasis being placed by different teachings and different which are actually based on different literature. Some actually regard the Visuddhimagga as the authoritative text. And they feel that, oh, this Visuddhimagga actually provides me with a lot of practical experience, guidance, whereas the sutta actually only provides me with the theory. But of course, I beg to differ. I disagree with that notion. If you read the suttas, the Buddha has given a lot of good pointers how we can practice to develop the jhanas, and even by just developing first jhana alone, you can become a stream enterer, and all the way to arahantship. So, we need not despair, it's not really the end, We, as lay followers, like what the Buddha actually told Anathapindika, you should actually develop jhanas, not just do dhanas, but also develop jhanas. So with this, I just hope that I can help also to draw a distinction between the Sutta jhana as taught by the Buddha, and also the Visuddhimagga jhana, as taught, as based on the Visuddhimagga, but this written after the Buddha's parinibbana. And of course, another school that teaches no jhana is allowed, no jhana is required. No jhana is required, that you can just be a dry eye vision arahant, and just be an arahant without having jhana, So so that is the diverse, But if you actually look at the dry vision arahant, right, where they say no jhana is required, in a way, it's also true, no jhana is required. If the context is actually in respect of Visuddhimagga jhana, then it is true, that you don't need to have that Visuddhimagga jhana to attain, stream entry or arahantship, So in that context, it's correct, you can be a dry vision arahant without the Visuddhimagga jhana, but you must have the Sutta jhana in order for you to even become a stream enterer. So that part, needs to be explained when you say dry vision arahant. In what context are you saying? And of course there are those who say, oh, you must practice, very high levels of jhana. That is their option. It is also another way. But my preference is, I always go back to the suttas. I always go back to what the Buddha actually taught in terms of the Sutta jhanas, which it doesn't seem to be that impossible to achieve. If you put your mind and effort to it, once you actually get the jhana factor, the first jhana factors, then you're able to concentrate and you'll be able to penetrate, the Dhamma, and become a stream enterer, and with that, your life will not be in vain as a human being. At least, you have attained first jhana, and you also become a stream enterer. Who knows? You're developing the potential to be reborn, in the Brahma world, because you develop jhana. And of course the happiest of all is that you're a stream enterer. And woeful pains are closed off. And up to 7 lives you need to suffer in this samsara. So it's a wonderful thing. So I hope through this Dhamma talk, I'm able to give you, a clearer understanding, in terms of the different interpretation of jhana, and what we should do in order for us to practice in accordance with the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One. Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Luz, for today's sharing. Now, this morning we have spent some wholesome time participating in the puja and listening to Brother Luz sharing on jhanas. So if you have any comments of your views of your jhana, of your experience, do put your comments at the video below. Now we have spent some wholesome time. Now let's dedicate some merits to all beings, whether they are seen and unseen. Now let's compose our minds and I'll start the dedication of Marys. Anumodana. Akasata cha bummata devanaga mahidika punyang tam anumoditva chiram rakkantu lokasasanang ettavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe satta anumodantu Sabba sampatti siddhya idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Patana, aspirations. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani Bana Patiya Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching. For other videos, please visit the links below. Bye bye for now.